In the summer of 1748, a group of workers digging through layers of ash and rock in southern Italy broke through into something unexpected. A room, intact, with furniture still in place, with painted walls still vivid, with objects exactly where someone had left them, not decades ago, not centuries ago, but nearly 1700 years before. They had found Pompeii, a city that had not decayed slowly, the way most ancient cities do, crumbling stone by stone over centuries until nothing remains but foundations and fragments. Pompeii had not been forgotten. It had been buried, sealed beneath 12 feet of volcanic ash and pumice on a single August morning in the year 79 AD, preserved almost perfectly in the moment of its destruction. What they found inside that ash was extraordinary. Bread still in the ovens, wine still in the jars, graffiti still on the walls, and people, their bodies long since gone, but their shapes perfectly preserved in the hardened ash, frozen in their final moments with an accuracy that no sculpture could match. Pompeii is not just an archaeological site. It is a photograph, a snapshot of a single moment in Roman history, captured with such precision that 2,000 years later, we can walk its streets, read its advertisements, and know what its people ate for breakfast on the last morning of their lives. My name is Brian, and this is Vanished Worlds. Tonight we go back to that morning, to the city of Pompeii at the height of its power, and to the 24 hours that ended everything. This is the story of the last day of Pompeii. To understand what was lost, you first have to understand what Pompeii was. By the 1st century AD, Pompeii was a thriving, cosmopolitan city of approximately 11,000 people. Though some estimates put the population higher, closer to 20,000, when including the surrounding farms and villas. It sat in the fertile volcanic plains of the Campania region, near the Bay of Naples, in the shadow of a mountain that its residents simply called the mountain. They had no word for volcano. The concept did not really exist in the Roman world. The mountain, what we now call Mount Vesuvius, had not erupted in living memory. Its slopes were covered in vineyards and farms. Its soil, enriched by centuries of volcanic activity, was among the most productive in all of Italy. Pompeii was not Rome. It was not a capital or a seat of empire. It was something closer to a prosperous market town, the kind of place where merchants and craftsmen and farmers came together, where goods from across the Mediterranean world passed through on their way to the great estates of the Roman elite. But prosperous is exactly the right word. Pompeii had everything a Roman city should have. A forum, the central public square where business and politics were conducted. Several temples, including a magnificent one to Jupiter overlooking the entire city. A large amphitheater capable of seating 20,000 spectators for gladiatorial games. 2 theaters for dramatic performances. Multiple bath complexes where residents gathered not just to wash, but to socialize, gossip, and conduct business. It had restaurants, thermopolia they were called, where working people bought hot food through street-facing counters, their menus painted directly on the walls. It had bakeries, their stone mills still visible today. It had a red light district. It had brothels with explicit frescoes above the doors to indicate what was available inside. It had dogs. We know this because someone painted a mosaic at the entrance to one house showing a snarling dog on a leash, with the words Cave Canem beneath it. Beware of the dog. It had elections. Campaign slogans were painted on walls across the city. Endorsements from bakers, from innkeepers, from neighbors. One reads, "The neighbors unanimously support the election of Marcus Appidius Sabinus as aedile, a man of integrity." It had lovers. Someone scratched into a wall, "I was here." Secundus says hello to his prima. Pompeii was, in every sense that matters, alive. Full of the ordinary human business of living. of eating and sleeping and working and arguing and falling in love. And then the mountain spoke. The eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD did not come without warning. The mountain had been signaling its intentions for years, and for weeks before the final catastrophe, those signals became impossible to ignore. The problem was that no one in the Roman world had the knowledge to understand what they were seeing. For several years before the eruption, the region around Vesuvius had been shaken by earthquakes. This was unusual but not alarming. Earthquakes were a fact of life in the Campania region, and the Romans simply accepted them as the mood of the gods. In 62 AD, 17 years before the eruption, a massive earthquake had struck the region and caused significant damage across Pompeii. The city had spent the years since rebuilding, which meant that in 79 AD, many of Pompeii's most important buildings were still under repair or had only recently been completed. The Temple of Jupiter at the center of the Forum was still being restored when the end came. But in the weeks and months before the eruption, something new began to happen. Springs and wells in the area began to dry up unexpectedly. The ground itself began to tremble with a kind of continuous low vibration that animals could sense but humans could barely detect. And in the days immediately before the eruption, small earthquakes struck the region so frequently that people were sleeping outdoors rather than risk being trapped in collapsing buildings. We know all of this because of an extraordinary document. 2 letters written by a man named Pliny the Younger, an eyewitness to the eruption who watched from across the bay. He was 17 years old at the time, and his account, written decades later at the request of the historian Tacitus, is one of the most remarkable pieces of historical documentation to survive from the ancient world. Pliny writes that on the morning before the eruption, his uncle, the famous naturalist Pliny the Elder, commander of the Roman fleet at Misenum, noticed a cloud rising from the mountain. It was, Pliny writes, shaped like a pine tree, a massive column rising straight up before spreading outward in a broad flat canopy. Pliny the Elder, ever the scientist, ordered a boat prepared. He was going closer to see. He would never return. The exact date of the eruption has been debated by scholars for generations. Ancient manuscripts give August 24th as the date, and for centuries this was accepted without question. But archaeology has complicated the picture. Excavations in recent decades have uncovered evidence that points to a date in October or November instead. Braziers set up for heating, heavy woolen clothing on victims, autumn fruits and nuts in storage. The carbon-based writing on some inscriptions has been dated to October at the earliest. Whatever the precise date, the sequence of events is clear. The eruption began in the late morning hours, somewhere between noon and early afternoon. Vesuvius did not erupt gently. It exploded. In the initial blast, a column of ash, gas, and debris was hurled 15 miles into the sky, so high that it was visible across the Bay of Naples, across the entire Campanian plain, from ships far out to sea. For the first several hours, the danger to Pompeii took the form of falling debris. Pumice stone, lightweight, porous rock blasted from the mountain, began raining down on the city at a rate that astonished survivors. The stones were not large enough to kill, but they accumulated rapidly, piling up at a rate of several inches per hour. People had choices to make. Some gathered their valuables and fled immediately, heading for the city gates and the roads leading away from the mountain. These people, in most cases, survived. Others waited. They sheltered in their homes, pulling mattresses over themselves for protection against the falling stones, waiting for the eruption to stop or slow. Some tied pillows to their heads. Some barricaded themselves in cellars. Some made it to the beach, hoping to escape by sea, and found the water too rough and wild to board any vessel. By evening, the pumice layer on the streets of Pompeii was already several feet deep. Roofs were beginning to collapse under the weight. Those who had waited too long to leave now found the streets nearly impassable, the debris reaching window level on the ground floors of many houses. And the mountain was not finished. In the early hours of the morning, somewhere between midnight and dawn, the eruption entered its second and deadliest phase. The column of ash and debris that had been hurled into the sky could no longer support its own weight. Collapsed. What followed was something the Romans had no name for and no concept of. Modern volcanologists call it a pyroclastic flow, a superheated avalanche of gas, ash, and rock that travels down the slopes of a volcano at speeds of up to 300 miles per hour, at temperatures between 300 and 800 degrees Celsius. Nothing survives a pyroclastic flow. Not buildings, not trees, not people. The first surge hit the town of Herculaneum, north of Pompeii, just before midnight. Herculaneum had largely been evacuated earlier in the day, but those who had fled to the beach, hoping to escape by boat, were still there when the surge arrived. 300 people sheltered in boat houses along the seafront. They died in an instant, their bodies preserved so well by the heat that modern forensic analysis has been able to determine their diet, their diseases, their ages, and in some cases even the color of their hair. Pompeii received its first surges in the early hours of the morning. Each surge was not necessarily hot enough to kill instantly, but each one carried more ash, more gas, more lethal heat. People who had survived the night, buried up to their waists in accumulated pumice, were now caught. The final, largest surge, the one that buried Pompeii completely, struck sometime after dawn. It was over in seconds. The city that had been alive and breathing 20 hours earlier was now silent, buried under 12 feet of ash and debris, sealed as if it had never existed. Above the ruins, the smoke and ash hung in the sky for days. Pliny the Younger, watching from across the bay, described a darkness more absolute than any night, a darkness you could almost hold in your hands. When the sky finally cleared, the mountain had a new shape. The landscape had been rearranged, and the city of Pompeii had simply ceased to exist. For nearly 17 centuries, Pompeii slept beneath its blanket of ash. It was not entirely forgotten. Ancient documents mentioned a city called Pompeii, and locals had vague traditions about buildings and walls buried somewhere beneath the fields. But the precise location was lost, and no one looked very hard. Then in 1748, the Bourbon king of Naples ordered excavations to begin in the area around what is now called Civita, and the workers broke through into that intact room and everything changed. The early excavations were not archaeological by modern standards. They were treasure hunts. Paintings, mosaics, statues, and jewelry were stripped from the ruins and carried to the royal collections. Walls were dismantled. Frescoes were cut out and framed. Little attention was paid to context, stratigraphy, or the overall layout of what was being uncovered. But even the most careless excavations could not fail to be moved by what they found. Giuseppe Fiorelli, who took charge of excavations in 1860, made a discovery that transformed the way the world understood Pompeii. He noticed that the ash had hardened around the bodies of the victims, forming hollow shells. When the soft organic matter inside, the flesh, the clothing, the wood of furniture, had decayed over the centuries, it left behind perfect voids in exactly the shape of what had been there. Fiorelli began pouring liquid plaster into these voids. When it hardened and the surrounding ash was carefully removed, what emerged were perfect casts of the victims in their final moments. A dog, still chained to a post, twisted in agony. A man, face covered by his cloak, hands outstretched. A woman, her face pressed into the ground. A family, huddled together. A man, a woman, 2 children. The smaller ones sheltered beneath the adult's arms in a gesture that needs no translation across 2,000 years. These casts are among the most powerful objects in the world. They are not statues. They are not art. They are the actual shapes of actual people, preserved at the exact moment of their deaths, as real and immediate as a photograph taken this morning. Pompeii had stopped being an archaeological site. It had become a memorial. Today, Pompeii is one of the most visited archaeological sites on Earth. Nearly 4 million people walk its streets every year, and they are literally streets. You can still see the ruts left by cartwheels in the stone. You can still see the raised stepping stones that allowed pedestrians to cross the road without stepping in the filth that flowed through the gutters. You can still read the graffiti on the walls. There are love poems. There are insults. There are election slogans, advertisements, and the names of gladiators written with the admiration usually reserved for modern athletes. One piece of graffiti, scratched into a wall near a bar, reads simply, "I am amazed, O wall, that you have not yet collapsed from bearing the weight of so much tedious writing." Someone 2,000 years ago was tired of people writing on walls. Pompeii tells us something that no amount of official history can, what ordinary life actually felt like in the Roman world. Not the lives of emperors and senators, but the lives of bakers and shopkeepers and schoolchildren and slaves. The people whose names were never recorded anywhere important. The people history forgot. But Pompeii did not forget them. Preserved their bread, their wine, their dogs and their pets, their furniture and their dishes and their children's toys, their jokes and their prayers and their last desperate attempts to survive. There is a particular caste that has never left me. It is a man, well dressed by the evidence of the plaster. A man of some means probably, who died not cowering, not running, but sitting upright against a wall, his head resting on one hand, his eyes closed. Was he asleep? Was he resigned? Was he simply too exhausted, after a night of terror, to run any further? We don't know. We will never know. But his posture, across 2,000 years, communicates something unmistakable. He was tired. He was human. He was afraid. And in the end, like every city and every civilization that has ever existed, he ran out of time. Pompeii endures not because of what it achieved, but because of what it lost, and what the ash had the mercy to preserve. The bread in the oven, the dog at the door, the graffiti on the wall. This has been Vanished Worlds. If these stories matter to you, subscribe and come back, because the past is full of people who deserve to be remembered.